So I thought I'd record this. I'm actually going to be talking to my Signal group. I sent a text that says, so I've been thinking about Pride lately. It's Pride Month, and I said, I know, go figure, right? Anyways, I got some thoughts on how it manifests, namely an unwillingness to admit being wrong, or especially admit even the possibility of being wrong and mean it. And I said I'd share in a voicemail message in a moment, but I wanted to record it as well, upload it to my channel as an unlisted video. That's how I mostly use my channel, as unlisted videos, to capture thoughts for me to primarily look back on later and kind of think about in order to help me be a better husband, better father, better man. It's funny, we were watching Cruise Part 2 and the family's names, the Bettermans. That's what my brain does. It goes off like that. But I figured, since Signal sometimes has dropped off my video messages and I gotta hold the button, that I would record a video message on my iPad that is sitting on our jogging stroller as I'm in the backyard. And I'm just gonna swipe up on the record, start talking to these guys in a voice memo. I have no notes prepared. This is just, I've been thinking about stuff. And with that minute and a half intro, here we go. Hey gents. So it worked out pretty well. I got home after cleaning the Airbnbs, and I've got Gideon in there. Shiloh's taking a nap, and Maria went upstairs. Hopefully she can get a nap. I'm praying that she gets a nap. So I'm also recording this via video on my iPad in the backyard, which I'll upload to the USMC Ministries channel, so that in addition to listening to me, if you wanted to, you could watch me talk while I do this. If you wanted to. Sometimes that's a little bit more enjoyable than listening. Sometimes the facial expressions and the hand gestures or whatever kind of provides the necessary nuance, as I like to say. So, with this topic of pride, I will give a story initially, because over the last couple of days, and a lot of my examples come out of my marriage, because one of my goals is to help other men be better husbands and fathers. And by teaching, a lot of times you do better. Those who, it's kind of like the flip side of those who can't do teach. Those of you who have been instructors realize that you actually learn more because you have to teach the other person how to do it. So I use my own examples because I'm trying to be a better husband, and I'm going back and forth with a friend on Facebook Messenger about egalitarianism and complementarianism, and he's talking about how his wife feels empowered, and because he's more egalitarian bent. And I'm like, that's interesting. You're focusing on a feeling, and the feelings are of empowerment. I should ask my wife how she feels. And so I asked her if she felt empowered, and she said yes. And I asked her if I was being a good leader. There's somebody violating the noise ordinance in the city of San Francisco. Sorry for the distraction. But she said that, she kind of hesitated with respect to the leadership question, because I definitely have a lot of work to do there. But then I asked her if she wanted me to lead, and she also hesitated with that one too. So we are very different. We're going through a little bit stressful time right now, because I'm planning on flying out for the weekend for a retirement ceremony that my buddy is having. Unfortunately, his wife's not going to be there, and I'm the narrator. He asked me a couple months ago if I could go. I feel a little bit bad because, Chris, you're in this channel, and I didn't come to your retirement, but that was back in April, and things are, I guess, a little bit more. I mean, we got a cleaner for our Airbnb business, so it kind of worked out for me to be able to leave. And we're trying to launch 2 Airbnbs this month, and we've been doing a lot of work, so it's just kind of stressful. Like, one of the stress points was, I put up the listing, I took pictures down in the basement where the laundry is. I only got half the washer. It was a picture that I was sending the landlord because I moved a desk and a rug from the apartment that we rented down there, and I was just like, hey, we moved this down here, and he was like, can you send me a picture? So that picture was on my phone when I was updating the Airbnb listing, and that's what I uploaded to Airbnb when I was home, and my wife freaked out about it. She was like, what is this picture? It's like a dungeon down there. And I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. And I got upset by her reaction, and so we're just going back and forth a lot, and there's a lot of little pressure point things. And so one of them was my phones. I have multiple phones. I have this phone that I'm talking on right now to you guys. I have another phone in my hand where I trade cryptocurrency, and then there's my Airbnb phone, which is not in my pocket. Maybe it's in, no, I left it inside, where I answer Airbnb messages. And one of the main reasons is that when I'm doing something, when I want to say, check the Airbnbs, if I don't have a separate phone on which to do that, I will, if I had it all on one phone, say I had it on this phone that I'm recording a message to you guys on, I'd grab the phone, I'd open it up, and I'd see, oh, I got an email. So I would check the email, and then I'd forget that I was going to do the Airbnb thing. So I know the ways that I'm distracted, and I know how to, and I'm just trying to limit those distractions. So that's one reason. Another reason is it makes it simpler for bank accounts. So like I can Zelle myself money, not really myself, but well, yeah, I mean, the phone that I'm talking to you guys on right now is like the ministry phone. I have a ministry account. And so for our business, we want to tithe, we want to give. And because we are double taxed, your income's taxed, and every time you spend money, it's sales tax. I feel like, well, for tax purposes, I can double expend. So my business has a business expense of funding USMC Ministries, and then USMC Ministries can be the way that we provide tithe to the church because it's a nonprofit. And so the other day I was talking to my brother about how my dad taught us that whenever things are tight, if he would increase his level of giving, the Lord would bring in more business for his company. And so I was leaving a message for my brother on Voxer, and I was saying, why don't I just try this right now? We've got Sunday through Thursday, no bookings, and we need bookings. And so I'm going to give from our business account to the ministry account some money and see what happens. And that night we got a booking. And it could have been just coincidence, but like the Bible does say, test me in this. And so although prosperity preachers like to use that to guilt people into giving, I was using it to see if the Lord would give us a booking by giving from the ministry account. So anyway, so I'm telling my wife that she's not really all that interested. She actually gets a little bit annoyed that it seems a little gray area. It seems a little skosh. And because of my background, because a lot of the other things that I do, and I'm transparent about it, like I tell people that I lie to people, but I tell them that I'm going to tell you when I lie to you. So, because I think there's two types of liars. The liars who will admit that they're liars, and the liars who say that they're not liars. So anyway, this message is supposed to be about pride, right? And I'm 6 minutes into it, and I haven't really touched on that very much. But in talking, my wife's not a huge fan of the multiple phone thing, because she'll text me and she won't get a response, and she's like, what phone are you on? So I created a group text where she can text all 4 phones at the same time, and I would be more likely to respond, because if I'm on this phone and she texted all 4 phones, then it would pop up. If I was trading on this phone, then that would pop up. But it was like 2 nights ago, I left the Airbnb phone at the Airbnb because I was planning on going back over there to paint, and I didn't want to say I can't find my phone, because then you're gonna make fun of me for having multiple phones. And so it kind of blew up a little bit, and I was just like, please do not, like, that's not helpful right now, right? And she makes the accusation of pride. Like, so it's because of my pride that I don't want to just have one phone. And I'm like thinking through that, and I'm like, okay, is it because I'm prideful, or is it because I'm telling myself that it's efficient, it's helpful, like I'll be less distracted, I have a better capability? And yeah, the phone bill is the phone bill. Like, the business theoretically makes enough money for that. It's a business expense. And when you have 3 phones or more, it's like $20 a month to add an extra phone. So because I got a phone line for me and my wife already, and my 2 sons already have a phone line already, there's 4 phones. So having 2, 3, 4 other phones is like an extra $60 a month. That, I believe, is expensible for the businesses and the ministry that I'm trying to operate, because it gives me a greater capability. But she doesn't want to hear that, and I don't want to hear that she doesn't want to hear it. And the pride accusation came up, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, I'm the most prideful person that I've ever met, and I'm probably the most prideful that I ever will meet. So I don't have any problem whatsoever, like admitting that I'm prideful. But having pride as the root of multiple phones is bewildering to me. Like my wife was like, "You even shared on social media about pride," and I did. There were some good quotes, the C.S. Lewis quote about pride. So I was just kind of like, okay, well, I need to be willing to admit that I'm wrong about having multiple phones, and I need to address these pain points in our marriage so that they're not pain points. And so that's kind of where this thought, well, it's where this thought went when I was thinking about what people do not apologize for. And I ended up apologizing to my wife for getting upset. And I don't know how I could apologize to her for having multiple phones. I honestly don't think that I would be very efficient trying to do Airbnb stuff and trying to do, like, for one thing, my personal phone, I got the cheap one, the 64 gigabyte phone, and it like glitches. It's an iPhone, it's a 12, but it's slow, and because the storage always gets full, like it deletes apps. So every week I'd probably be re-downloading the Airbnb app. So that would be a problem. So I'm just trying to solve these problems, and I am weird. I work differently. My wife sent me a Instagram message saying that she appreciates me being different, but then I threw back at her, "You don't really appreciate it. Don't tell me you appreciate me being different." And I didn't say it that nicely either. So, but pride is the root of a lot of, well, I believe it's the root of all sins. I believe pride is the root of the love of money, which is the root of all sin, because people want more money. But with respect to this particular month, and with respect to the people who are condoning the certain activities, I think people don't want to admit that they're wrong with respect to their choice of lifestyle. And with respect to the last 4 or 5 years, people haven't wanted to admit that they were wrong about COVID, its origin, the best treatment. They haven't wanted to admit that they were wrong about the vaccine, whether it was effective or helpful in any way, or that everybody needed to take it, or everybody was required to take it. People weren't very willing to admit that they were wrong about stuff with the election. People haven't been willing to admit that they were wrong about George Floyd and all this stuff, or anything that they were led to believe. People don't want to admit that they're wrong about supporting the most corrupt government in the world, in Ukraine, and they want to say, well, it's about the people of Ukraine, and I totally agree, but is it the people's flag or is it their government flag? You know what I mean? It's like, or is it their military logo? And so, yeah, and definitely people don't want to admit that they were wrong about Trump or Biden. So I think pride is at the root of that. And bringing it back to what I said at the beginning of this conversation, of this little monologue about my friend who's more egalitarian and I'm more biblical patriarchal, I'm losing my train of thought. I was going to go somewhere with this happens to me sometimes too. The issues that are facing our day with respect to biblical things. I'm trying to get back to what have people been wrong about with respect to, like, the social justice thing or prosperity theology thing. You know, my sister, I think she's admitted that she was kind of wrong, but because of her bend towards the prosperity theology of my dad, he shall live and not die, thus saith the Lord. She said that many times, maybe not those exact words, but that's how I recall it. Big fight with my brother she had when my dad was dying. And because if we said dad might die, and therefore we need to make sure we're ready and everything's in order, we were therefore not having faith, and if we didn't have faith, then he was more likely to die. So because of her theology, we were prohibited from preparing for what eventually happened. And it did happen, even though we didn't say, well, it might happen, because she wouldn't let us say it might happen. And she was wrong. And that was hard. And so, and trying to get to the root of it, well, I think it was pride. My iPad dropped, so I had to, and it automatically stopped. So this is part 2. So my sister was wrong. I think it was pride that made her be wrong, because she was unwilling to admit that she was wrong, and she was unwilling to admit that she might be wrong. Oh, that's where I was going to go with this. So the egalitarian, the women's pastor thing. So this is where I'll wrap up, because I'm planning on going to the Southern Baptist Convention next week, and I guess Saddleback Church with Rick Warren is going to appeal being disfellowshipped from the Southern Baptist Convention. If they win the appeal and they get brought back into the Southern Baptist Convention, there will be a nod, an endorsement, like an inadvertent endorsement to women pastors by the Southern Baptist Convention. It will be something that they acknowledge and by default endorse. And even though they don't necessarily endorse it, here comes the train, but it's a passenger train, so it shouldn't be too loud. So, and this is how Don't Ask, Don't Tell Warren. This is how, first we're going to say that people can serve, but they're not allowed to say that they are what they are. And then we're going to repeal that. And even though it would make sense if we authorize something and then repeal what we authorized, then it's no longer authorized. That's the way it would make sense in real world and the opposite of clown world. But in clown world, when you authorize something while applying restrictions to it, and then you repeal what you authorized, you're only repealing the restrictions to it, and what was authorized with restrictions is now authorized without any restrictions. So the same thing that happened with gays serving openly in the military is probably next week going to happen. And I'm not a prophet, and I'm not the son of a prophet, right? But it's probably going to happen with the Southern Baptist Convention, or at least that seems to be the strategy that might be working. And why does that matter? Why does it matter if women are endorsed by this denomination to be pastors? Well, because half of them don't want it, and therefore the Southern Baptist Convention, one of the largest evangelical conventions that does a lot of work, will fracture. The fault line will become like a hole in the ground because of an earthquake. And would that happen if the decision was the opposite, which is kind of what I'm hoping and what I'd go down there to talk about? Would the Southern Baptist Convention break in two if they say, you know what, we're not hearing this appeal, we're rejecting Saddleback, you are staying out of the Southern Baptist Convention because you went against the Baptist faith and message and endorsed and ordained women pastors, and oh, by the way, these other 1,000 churches that are in America that are receiving money from the Southern Baptist Convention, you are no longer receiving money from the Southern Baptist Convention because you too have women's pastors, unless you unordain them or let them go be Anglican like Beth Moore did. I don't think that the Southern Baptist Convention would fracture like it's going to, I think, and I pray that it won't, when they say, okay, Saddleback, you can come back in. We're sorry. No harm, no foul. But we still don't think that you should have women's pastors, but, it's your right to do whatever you want to do because that's the way the Southern Baptist works. So, fast forward to Rick Warren's conversation with Russell Moore. Rick Warren says, I could be wrong on this. He doesn't really mean it. He's saying that he could be wrong, but he doesn't think that he is. In fact, he's very adamant about being right and thinking that he's right about it. And that's what I mean by one of these manifestations of pride. And so if I'm wrong about a biblical patriarchy, do I really mean it? Do I really mean that I could be wrong about this? And that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. And so I'm continuing to talk to an egalitarian, and I'm asking him to try to convince me, and I'm open. And any of you guys can challenge me. But those are my thoughts in like 20 minutes. You can listen on Signal at 1.5x, and once I finally finish this video and upload it, you can watch that at 2x as well. God bless you guys. I guess my wife couldn't get a nap, unfortunately, but see how that goes. I appreciate you guys, especially any of you who listened to this whole thing or watched it eventually. And I definitely want to continue this conversation. I definitely don't want to have pride as the root of why I use multiple phones. And so I could be wrong, and I want to mean that I could be wrong. All right, God bless you. That's it.